I'm Fran Harper, and if I could go back and have a chat with my 30-year-old self, well, let's just say that conversation would be a pretty interesting one. If you're listening, the chances are you're ambitious, driven, and trying to figure out this wild ride we call life. And let me tell you, you're not alone. Here, my guests are ready to share the highs, the lows, and everything in between, so we can all learn from the lived experiences. Today, I have a wonderful guest with me, a chef that I've been following now for a number of years, Chef John McFadden. And before I bring John to the microphone, let me give you a quick overview of John's achievements to date. Chef John McFadden is a distinguished Australian culinary professional with over 38 years of experience in the hospitality industry, beginning his career at just age 12 as a kitchen hand. He swiftly progressed through the ranks, completing his apprenticeship at Le Maire Fine Dining by 19. Not too shabby. His impressive resume includes roles at esteemed establishments such as the two-hatted Grand Fine Dining Room at the Windsor Hotel and the Zoo Bistro at the Hyatt Regency, where he earned the title of Best Hotel Dining Restaurant in Australia. In 22 and 23, McFadden achieved international acclaim by winning back-to-back World Seafood Championship titles at the World Food Championships in Dallas, Texas, and was later crowned the overall World Food Champion in 2023, the first non-American to receive this honor in the history of the competition. Beyond his culinary achievements, John serves as the National Chairman of Judges for the Chef of the Year at Food Service Australia for 13 years and contributed to the Bocuse d'Or selection process for the Australian culinary team. Currently, John is the National Sales Marketing Manager at Ecory, focusing on sustainable cooking oil solutions. Did I miss anything, John?
No, that's a good high-level overview because we could be here for days.
Exactly, and that's what's so wonderful about this, and why I'm so grateful that you've joined me on What I Wish I Knew at 30, because I know that we're going to dive into the hard-earned lessons, the mistakes that turned into gold, and the wisdom that quite possibly you wish you had at 30. So everyone, grab your coffee, get comfortable, and let's get into it. All right, John, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thank you. Great to be here. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. So just imagine we're jumping into a time machine right now. You're 30 years old again. Where are you? What are you doing? What's going on at this stage of life?
Yeah, God, 30 sounds great. I'd love to be 30 again. Look, that sort of takes me back to we're like early 2000s. So obviously we had the Olympics here that year around that time.
Yeah. Yep.
I was working at the Sydney club in the city. So it was a private club. So they'd put in a brand new restaurant, multi-million-dollar restaurant. They still had the old club upstairs. So we're trying to attract sort of a younger clientele to sustain the club. And it was quite a big year because on the back of 99, 2000, we bought our first property at Mona Vale, my wife and I. So quite an outlay back then, to the point that we only had like $5,000 left in our bank accounts. You know, the priority for us wasn't so much holidays. It was just work, save, pay off the debt, head down, bum up, so to speak.
Yeah.
But I think, what one of the challenges was for us at that stage is a month after we moved into our property, my wife was diagnosed with breast cancer. So
John,
it was quite trying to work. She was working professionally. She was in hospitality. We just bought a property. We've just outlaid all our finances.
Wow.
And that sort of hit us sort of, front on. So yeah, it was a big time for us.
No, and everything good now? Yeah,
look, unfortunately, a few years later, she lost a battle to breast cancer. So that was sort of, about 4 to 5 years later. She got through 4 years of the breast cancer, the annual checkups. And then in year 4, which was our final checkup, was spots found in the liver and her lungs. And unfortunately,
John, I'm so sorry.
No, I appreciate that. And unfortunately, liver cancer, the liver sort of failed in the end. She passed away about 20 years ago now. So it was a big part of, at the age of 30, it was a huge undertaking because my career was sort of at that pivotal point of really launching.
Wow, yeah, that's Yeah, I wasn't expecting that one.
You asked the question.
I did, absolutely. As a, as a survivor, of bowel
Yeah.
cancer, so yeah, it's, just testament to, some of us are lucky, some of us
Yeah,
aren't. And,
absolutely.
that's,
So 100%.
yeah. So really then, I mean, going back to those years,
Mm.
prior to that, I mean, did you feel that you had life figured out, at 30, or were you still
Yeah, well,
just winging it?
yeah, no, absolutely. Like, I had a roadmap. I had a plan. I met Fiona on Hayman Island, and I'd spent a year up there and in the tropics, and at the time that was the third best resort in the world. It
Mm,
was owned by Ansett Airlines at the time, and I was really doing it to build out my CV. It was like I'd worked in a two-hatted restaurant. I qualified at 19. I did all
yeah.
the fine dining. I had an Asian background through my apprenticeship, so when we came back to Sydney from Hayman, I was hoping to launch into Asia and go to Vietnam and learn all the Eastern cuisines and what have you, and then ideally bring that back to Australia.
Mm,
But yeah, the pathway changed. Do you know what I mean? We came
yeah.
to Sydney. I settled down in Sydney. I was working in 5-star properties like the Shangri-La Hotel. Then I went on to the Hyatt Regency at Zoo Bistro.
Mm,
I guess that at that time, although I had these massive plans, there was a bit of a detour, so to speak, as to,
mm,
we had to reset, realign, reprioritize, and make the best of what we had. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So, that was sort of, late 90s, early 2000. Yeah. And then as things are sort of shaped and delivered to you, you deal with them as you see fit. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
you can have the best intentions in life.
Mm,
You don't always get there, but you have to make amends and be comfortable with, that shift.
yeah. Look, and that's just reality. As you say, the perspective changes, your priorities
Yeah.
change.
Yeah, exactly
Um,
right.
yeah. So your biggest dream at that time, I mean, obviously not, notwithstanding the tragedy that
Mm.
obviously went through your life, but I mean, if we take it sort of a few years later, and how did you get back on track?
Yeah, look, awesome question. I took a couple of jobs sort of conveniently to help manage Fee's health. So they were primarily Monday to Friday,
Mm,
but I needed to keep busy. I needed to keep
yeah.
my brain busy. Although we're dealing what life presented us, I had to keep stimulated. I had to keep busy. Fiona did well. She worked right up to the end. She was working at Bathers Pavilion. She helped Surgeon Victoria reopen Bathers at the time, which was great. And I took a job. So the Sydney Club closed. I then moved to the University and Schools Club, and it was primarily Monday to Friday. So it really suited our means and our lifestyle at that time. And then a massive opportunity came up to me in 2004. A friend of Fiona's knew a lady that worked at the Art Gallery in New South Wales, and they were looking for a head chef. Unbeknownst to me, I didn't realize the company was called Trippus White. So funny enough, we were
Just a little
given.
company.
Yeah, I know. Not so now. Like they've leaps and
Yeah,
bounds going great guns.
absolutely.
So Jeff Morgan from Morgan and Banks was a customer of Fiona's at Bathers, and he understood how unwell she was. So he offered us his house at Byron Bay at Waddigos Beach. So we went up there free, stayed for a week. And what was amazing was the help and the support and the nurturing. And
Mm,
while we were up there, Trippers White contacted me and wanted to do an interview. And I said, look, I'm away at the moment. And that was back in the days of fax machines. So they faxed all the menus to the local post office. I ran down, dropped them. And then we had a phone interview. And it went great guns. And then I came back to Sydney. I met Michelle, who was the general manager, and Jodie Ringmar, who was the venue manager at the art gallery. And I was offered head chef of the gallery. At that time, Brian Trippers had 5 properties, and we had to sort out a few things at the gallery: teams, personalities,
mm, mm,
characteristics, and yada
all
yada.
the things.
And yeah, it's business, right?
Mm,
And what was good about it is I was working between Botanic Gardens restaurant and the State Library. So I sat with Brian and Michelle a little while down the path and said, look, I think you need a chef to look over all your businesses because we're operating in silo. We're
yeah,
not sharing
yeah,
people or teams or what have
yeah.
you. And in essence, I sort of created myself the group head chef's job at Trippers White. Oh, look, and to be fair to Brian and Michelle, it was amazing. You know, the opportunity, obviously we were tendering for businesses. So I'd help with food concept design, presentations. Then we'd build teams. We put the teams in and I'd resort back and, and that business grew substantially. So, I was fortunate enough to be there for 10 years. And after that 10 years, I think we had 35, 40 properties.
Oh, wow.
That was a big part of my career. And, even with Fiona's health, she sort of passed away probably about a year or so into that. But that was a real turning stone in my career as well. It was just, it was awful on one side, incredibly rewarding on the other. And I really needed, I guess, that inspiration and that desire to go and do what I do really well could probably be seen as a distraction, but it was a really good distraction because I could really pour myself into it.
Yeah. And a positive distraction, because there's so many things after a tragedy, after something like that, when your life completely takes on a new direction. There's lots of different ways we can deal with that.
Exactly
to have,
right.
and especially in the chef's world, as we well know, addictions and things like that, unfortunately, has been a big issue.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. And look, I'm pretty proud to say that I've never touched drugs.
Yeah.
I went through, in my 19s, 20s with marijuana and stuff like that. Never bought the stuff. It was always offered, but I never went down that path. It was just, I don't like losing control. That sounds terrible. I'm not a control freak.
No, it sounds good.
Yeah, but I don't want to wake up the next day and not know what happened yesterday. That freaks me out.
Yeah, and fair enough too. So looking back now, what's something you were completely wrong about at 30?
Something that I was completely wrong about? Look, I had high expectations of where I wanted to be in my career by a certain time. Like, I started early. I started at 12. I qualified at 19. I was very competitive and I was very driven. And I gave up a lot of stuff, I guess, personally, to really push hard in my career. And I had certain goals and attributes that I wanted to achieve personally at any cost. Now, I know it sounds horrible, but I wanted to go places. I really wanted to go places. And obviously we had some setbacks there. And as I mentioned, I had to sort of reset and realign myself as to what was achievable without getting upset and frustrated by it, because there was a big part of my career where it was all about me. It was just me. This is personal, and it was about me. And I guess that's what's interesting about a kitchen. It's like playing a game of chess. You're competing against yourself. I mean, sure, there's another person across the table, but it's a game of strategy, right? And it's a game of patience. And that's probably something early in my career that I lacked, was patience, because I really wanted to push it. And the early days in the kitchen, yes, I was outspoken. Was I cocky? Yes, I was. Kitchens were very heavily dominated by Europeans, and I was put in my place very quickly. You stepped out of line or said something wrong, you knew about it. Trust me.
Cross comes the frying pan.
Yeah, but it's about resilience and discipline, and more importantly, respect. And that's something that sort of sits with me in a high regard, is that the people that I was working with are well respected. They work hard at what they do, and they didn't get their positions weren't just handed to them. And that was something I really respected in the kitchen. And coming up through sort of those European disciplines that, you had to earn your way through a kitchen. You couldn't bluff your way through it. You had to deliver. You had to show up. So yeah, look, I think, for me, it was sort of, that was really big about where I sort of got it wrong at 30. I wanted to be there, but I couldn't and I didn't, but I had to make different arrangements.
Yeah. And, and that's life strategic plan isn't always a straight line, is it?
Well, it's like the best destinations in the world, Fran. Like, you want to get there, but, something may happen that will distract that, interrupt that. It could be out of your control. And I think the lessons I've learned in life is that I've learned to accept those rather than get upset by them. And I think it's made me a stronger person, in that, stuff happens. and we can't change that. As long as we can
Yeah.
do the best we can with what we have,
Yeah.
nobody can ask for anything better than that.
No, absolutely. And, it is about how we show up. And I love that.
Sure.
They say life is the best teacher, and sometimes the lessons do come wrapped in disaster, obviously, personally. But from a professional perspective, let's talk about the biggest curveballs that were thrown at you during your career. What's one experience, and as I say, what was one experience that at the time felt like the worst thing ever, but really ended up shaping you?
Yeah, look, I'd probably lean back to the tragedy of Fiona and the time of
Yeah.
my career. It was really interesting because my family live up north, and they're like, "Oh, Johnny, you're going to sell your house to move up towards us, and what are you going to do? What are you going to do?" And like, I took a month off work, and I'm like,
Mm.
"Look, it's all too soon. It's all too much.
Yeah.
I just need to be in my own space."
Mm.
And I guess where I was really fortunate, with Brian and Michelle at Trippus White, is the support that they offered me and the time that I needed to
Mm.
deal with allowed me to come back into that business. I still had some luggage there, or baggage as some call it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think the hardest thing for me at the time was people just go about life as everyday life as they normally do, as they should. And it was weird for me because I'd lost something really important to me.
Mm.
And I had this feeling that didn't matter to others. And those
Mm.
others were people that I was in charge of. And that was a really big pill to swallow.
Mm.
But it wasn't their fault because it
No.
wasn't their challenge. It wasn't their issue. It was
No.
my issue.
Yeah.
And that took a little bit to overcome, because I was in the position I was, that, people needed me. I had to
Yeah.
guide them, support,
Yeah.
direction, mentor. So probably the first week I came back, that was a big challenge for me. That was a
Mm.
huge, I guess, a curveball because I wasn't prepared for that,
Yeah. Yeah.
as such, as well as I could sort of physically and mentally cope with the magnitude of it. And it was quite overwhelming. And I was
Yeah.
like, wow, okay, probably another week or two back on the job, it
Mm.
just seemed to calm down. And it was bizarre because I remember the first day walking back into the kitchen, I had someone come up to me immediately. I hadn't seen them for a month. And the first thing they said is, "Chef, I need to see you. I need a pay rise." And I'm like, okay, right. Happy
It's like,
days, right? So that's your
welcome to my
priority.
world. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And it just hit me like
Yeah.
a train. And I'm
I
like, oh,
bet.
wow,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
However, in their world, that was really important to them.
Yeah.
But for me at that moment in time,
Yeah.
on the rating scale, blatantly honest, the way I felt right there, it didn't even rate on my scale. And that
No.
sounds horrible because it wasn't about me, it was about them.
No,
And that was probably a curveball for me at the time to sort of grapple with immediately, but that sorted itself out fairly.
yeah, but that's a really interesting one, isn't it? Because our priorities are completely different, and
Correct.
everybody's model of the world is completely different. And a tough lesson, but I guess really good lesson to realize that we never actually know what's going on in someone's life.
Well, exactly. And I think in my career, it is taking the time to listen to people. That is one of the biggest assets I've learned over time is you've got to take time to get to know people. It's
Yeah.
very easy to make assumptions on the surface
Mm.
and be judgmental and throw your opinions around.
Yeah.
But until you walk a mile in someone else's shoes,
Mm.
you have no idea what's going on behind that facade. And people can cover things up
Mm.
amazingly well, but until you take the time to get to know what's really going on, and that's probably something that I've learned over time in sort of, those leadership roles, mentoring
Yeah.
roles that, you need to dig a bit deeper to really understand what makes people tick, what doesn't, what upsets
Excuse me.
people. And that's the power of the kitchen. Having led
Mm.
teams before, you got to know how far you can push people before they pick up a fry pan and throw it at you.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's no difference to a racing car. You got to know how far you can push it before something breaks.
Yeah.
And that's how you get the best performance out of anything without pushing it too far. And there's a level of respect that goes with that on both sides.
Mm.
But
Mm.
yeah, it's probably one of the biggest lessons I've learned over my years.
Yeah, and I'm in the kitchen as well. I mean, I've spent a lot of time in the kitchens in my role across the world, and you have so many different nationalities in one kitchen,
Cultures, interesting dynamics in kitchens, and you got to be careful in the way you set those dynamics up because some work better than others, and that is, and communication is a huge factor in those environments also.
No, absolutely. So if you could go back and whisper advice to yourself in that, back in that time, what would you say now?
Look, Fran, knowing what I know now and sort of reflecting on all those years, I'd probably give myself a pat on the back and say, well played.
Yeah. Fantastic. I love that. It's being a leader, I think also is part of accepting that it's actually okay to say, I did that really well. And reflection, all of those things to really look at, you've got to be your own, you've got to cheer yourself on. And you've obviously done that through, coming from a 12-year-old through to where you are now. What do you think is the biggest thing that's or the biggest challenge and around the way that you approach success today?
Yeah, look, I think the biggest challenge that I had was, what I went through. I went back into work. I poured myself into it. And I'm going to share a very intimate and true story here. We were expanding within Trippus White. We needed a new venue manager at the art gallery. And I was fortunate to sit on the final interview of the person that we decided to move forward with. And that was Karen Taylor. Jodie Ringmar said to me, look, I'm moving into Canberra. We're opening the National Gallery. She's got to step in my shoes. What do you think? You're going to have to work with her. And I'm like, look, she's got all the credentials, fantastic. And what was really interesting at the time is that, Karen was married and I just went through, we were just all professional people and really bizarre. I'm not a person that opens up very easy, but we'd sit down after a period of time and I had a coffee and I'd just open up, right? And I don't do that very easily, not even with my family. And it was just really bizarre that we could have these conversations. Long story short, a few years later, we got married.
Wow.
And Karen has been the backbone to all my success. She's kept me grounded. By Christ, she challenges me. She pushes me. She asks the questions. And when we had a family, she gave up full-time work. She was a general manager of multi-site venues in Sydney. So she raised our family. And without having that foundation and support, there is no way I would be able to achieve the accolades that I have over the years, being able to do what I do without having her in my corner. And I guess that success comes down to, one, having that support, two, believing in what I can do. I love what I do, and we've had some great rewards out of that, great expense and, costs that we all experience in hospitality. But we're both very driven people. We're very like-minded in our goals, so we share those.
Yeah.
We celebrate our successes, we commiserate our losses. And I think it's really important, and this is where the mentoring side of things come in, that you align yourself with somebody that's got a similar vision and goals that you do, so you can aspire to those and you support and encourage each other to achieve them. And I think that's been a great success for me, is that, having people in your corner helps a lot, because it's a pretty fierce world out there and there's no shortage of people that want to tear you down or cut you in half, and, the tall poppy syndrome and the whole lot. And, there's times where jealousy can be a bitch. And, and there's some people that are like that, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But you've got to see through it and rise above it. And I think it's just having that space to be successful has been great. I guess the challenge was I was out there doing all that while Karen was home raising the family. But now we've got kids that, they're great kids. Karen's back working, so we've gone through that cycle. And once again, it sort of goes back to the way we opened here. It's about reprioritizing, you know what I mean? Having those shared values, having those shared goals. But what's really important, Fran, is communication. You've got to talk to each other. You've got to agree. It's not a signed contract. Things change, but if you don't have each other's back, then it makes it challenging. So I've been very, very fortunate that a lot of my success I could put down to my wife, to be fairly honest.
Or the collaboration,
the partnership,
the partnership,
the team. Yes, exactly right.
That's right. And and I think we've all learned over the years that when the values don't align, there is no team. So,
Exactly.
so it's lovely to hear, that the values do align and you've got a strong partnership and you've got to where you are. So
Yeah.
if you
So
could give, yeah,
sorry, Fran,
go.
I'm just going to
No,
jump in
go.
there. I just want to finish sort of that challenge bit.
Mm,
And I've got, the challenge reminded me that success isn't just about what you achieve, but who you become in the process and who
I
stands
love
with you
that.
along the way. That's really important to me.
Yeah. And I think it's important to everyone because as you
Oh, without doubt.
become more successful, I think that is one of the things the people that don't support you will fall away.
Sure.
And
Yeah, they sort themselves out pretty quickly.
yeah, they do. And then you have the courage to actually make sure
Yeah.
that you let them go. And I love that.
Mm,
So wow, yeah, that's really powerful stuff.
thank
Do
you.
you think that younger professionals and entrepreneurs struggle, today, struggle with the same things we did? Or do you think they're actually facing a completely different world now?
Yeah, well, dynamics have changed since, early
Mm,
2000s to now and quite rapidly, to be fair.
mm, mm,
Look, I still believe that younger professionals deal with familiar struggles,
mm.
building credibility, managing stress, and finding balance.
Yep.
But today they also face a faster paced world, right? Shaped by technology, remote work,
Mm,
job
mm,
insecurity, and the
mm.
pressure of social media.
Yep.
It's the same game, just new rules.
Yeah. No, totally.
It's
I
very
mean,
different.
can you imagine back in, when you were 12 or it's through sort of 12 to 19, also building a personal brand on, can you
Well,
imagine that?
yeah, well, I know it's just, but I know it's worlds apart. And to think, and I even mentioned that, I was working for my CV. That was
Yeah.
my credential. That
Yeah.
piece of paper or those reference letters that you got from your employer, they were gold.
Yeah.
Do you know what I now?
Yeah.
But now, as I said, all this social media, the pressure is on how you're perceived across
Yeah.
social media. Your Facebook and
Yeah.
employers now doing the background research. So everyone's very vulnerable now and exposed.
Yeah. And that's absolutely true. That's one of the things that kids I think today still don't really understand, that once something's up on social media, it's
Exactly
there
right.
for good.
As permanent.
And
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly right.
and these AI search engines now are so clever. Even if you've taken it down within a few seconds, it's there. It's imprinted digitally, and I think
Yeah,
that's a really big thing
it's an
that
eye
that
opener.
yeah, 100%. So, what do you think is the best advice you ever received, and who gave it to you?
The best advice, this would be at the Shangri-La. A little story behind this one. So we're in the middle of service. I was second in charge of the brasserie restaurant. We had 25 chefs in that kitchen.
Uh,
Andy Bantock was the sous chef. And we were getting absolutely nailed in service. We had about 40 dockets up on the pass. Andy's grabbed me by the shirt and said, "Oh, come on, John, we're going to go out and have some lunch." I'm like, "Buddy, you're kidding. We're getting absolutely poleaxed here." He goes, "No, come with me." And we sit down at the table. I'm sitting here, my legs like jumping, my arms like, and I've got the jitters. And so, Andy, I said, the team, like, we've just walked out on the team. He said, "Oh, what are you going to have?" I'm like, "Buddy, I'm going to get indigestion if I eat something. Like, I'm so worked up." And he goes, "No, we're going to have a 2-course lunch." Okay, no worries. So we ordered the food, and he's like, "What's wrong?" I said, "Matey," I said, "Well, we've just walked out on the team." I said, "You're number one, I'm number two." And we just turned their back on it. And we're now out here enjoying ourselves eating lunch. I said, "It doesn't look very good." And then he said to me, he said, "John, if they can't survive one service without you or I in the kitchen, we've
mm,
done them a disservice.
mm,
I'm the leader, you're the number two. And if they can't step up when we step out, we failed them." And that hit me like a ton of bricks,
mm,
right? And then he said to me, he said, "John, I've got these keys in my pocket, right? And they're the keys to a car. So you can do whatever you like with them. You can take them, you can open the car, you can take it for a drive and see what the car can do. Or you can just stand there and put them back in your pocket and do nothing. It's up to you. The car's yours." But it was just a metaphor. Like it was just,
yeah, yeah,
and I'm like, right, got it. It just hit me like that, is that you can create opportunity. And
mm,
that opportunity is you lead the team. You set them up for success. You build them from the ground up. You
yeah,
train them and you stand beside them, but you have to let them fall occasionally.
yeah,
It's like a child when it crawls and walks. It's going to fall
mm,
over. But it's
yeah,
how you attend to that that matters. Right? If you're going to freak out every time they fall, then obviously they're going to have this startle reflex all the time. It's building that resilience, and that 2-course lunch is as confronting as it was for me to step out of service. It was a game changer for me. And that was all over a 30-minute lunch session. So that was really powerful for me.
Wow. And absolutely. I mean, it's like helicopter parents, isn't it? Actually being able to stand back and let your team, empower your team to make decisions.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And how did it go?
Oh, look, service went fine, but it was this, but Fran, it's the fear of letting go. And I think a lot of chefs are stepping into bigger jobs. It's always the fear of the unknown. I've controlled it. I've managed it for so long. What happens if it goes sideways? Well, what happens if it does? Someone else has got the opportunity. And then then it raises questions back to you. Is it, have I set them up for success? The person that's taking over, can they do it? And can I, hand on heart, stand by it and support it? So, and that's the shift change in regards to sort of being on the line and stepping into those middle management and senior management positions.
No, for sure. And would you say that was the biggest mindset shift that sort of really changed your, the way that you approach success?
Yeah, that. And then when I moved on from the A&A Hotel, I went up to Zoo Bistro at the Hyatt Regency, and that was a struggling restaurant at the time. We turned that around within 12 months. We lost a lot of people in the process, unfortunately, but it needed to happen.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the business wouldn't have succeeded. And I was very fortunate enough in that environment. There was a lady by the name of Carol Silveraja, food writer, chef. She loved my food style. And she just picked me up under her wing as sort of I guess, a bit of a mentor. And with her sort of credentials, she was invited to New York. I joined her over there. We cooked at the James Beard Foundation in 1997. And I was nobody. I was just John McFadden, sous chef of the, of Zoo Bistro. But because we're doing so well, starting to get into the newspapers, the magazines, Simon Marnie on the radio station and what have you. So, and when you start talking about brand and profile, that's when my brand and profile, I guess, started to emerge into industry. I don't know, I was 26 years of age, post-apprenticeship 7 years. I've been cooking for, 11, and I was only a sous chef. Now, there's not many chefs out there now that post-trade 11 years are a sous chef. So I'd done a lot of training. And the value for that for me, Fran, was that she gave up her time, her experience to nurture me. And I'm thinking, wow, look at the opportunity it's created for me. And I was like Johnny Nobody, you know what I mean? And I think in my later years, that really like what Andy Bantock and Carol did for me. I've embraced that back into industry. Mentor young kids, training programs from high schools and work placement. So it's been a really big thing of mine to sort of, give back to industry because these people gave me
I love
the
that.
exact
I
same
love that.
opportunity.
And the thing is as well, they saw something in you which maybe you didn't fully appreciate in yourself at the time.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah.
And isn't that one of the most beautiful things, when you work with these young chefs and young people in the industry, and maybe it keeps us young, maybe it's ego feeding, but I don't know. I think.
Yeah, Fran, I think what I love about it is, some of the people that I've touched over the, sorry, that's inappropriate to say it like that. Some of the impressions I've made over the years, the impressions I've made.
We can work that out.
So it's all humor. It's all good fun, right? Until someone gets hurt. But yeah, look, at the end of the day, some of the people that I've come across and what they've gone on to do, and I sit back and sort of look at their careers and feel that I've played a part in that. Is really rewarding. Do you know what I mean? On so many levels. Like when I finished at Zoo Bistro, I had people that, went on to work for Neil Perry, Ditmar Sawyer at level 41 and Paramount with Christine Manfield. And I'm like, that for me was like the holy grail. Do you know what I mean?
Did something right.
I wasn't. Yeah, well, exactly right. And gave them the skills and the credentials to keep aspiring into bigger and greater things. And that's what it's about. And that's really humbling for me.
That's amazing. No, I really want to talk to you about, it wasn't sort of in the questions, but I really want to talk to you about the World Championships because I was so excited watching that. And I know you know,
Thank you.
your posts that were coming out, and it was like,
Yeah,
yes, go and do it. It's like, go and hit
yeah,
America. And when you did
sure.
it, not just 1 year, but 2 years in a row,
Correct.
fantastic. So just tell me about that. What was the inspiration to go and do it?
Yeah, look, what inspired me was that I'd sort of stepped out of the professional kitchen about 5 or 6 years ago. And, I've been on the chairman of judges at Food Service Australia for sort of the last 12 years. And I just thought, you know what? I haven't competed for 30 years. I've judged, but just never competed. And I look at some of the guys and girls that do compete and think, no, I wouldn't do that. I couldn't do that. I won't do that. And this opportunity came up, and I thought, World Food Championships has got a nice sort of ring to it, and I love to benchmark myself and see where I'm at, like before my disciplines and training over the years, and just attention to detail is, I'm very anal with detail, and precision. So I thought, you know what, I'll give it a shot, see where we go. Won the golden ticket here, which elevated me to the US. I went over there, and to be fair, Fran, and it's probably something I don't talk about too much, is the amount of research that I did. It was every day for 5 months before I went. I was spending an hour a day, suppliers, research, their produces, their seasonality is different to us. Obviously, they use
Of course.
Fahrenheit, pounds and ounces. So, and what I was very fortunate was that I reached out to Curtis Stone. He's got a restaurant in Dallas. He put me in contact with the head chef there. They gave me a bunch of providores they use. So I wasn't just going to the local supermarket like most people to get the same produce. I needed a point of difference. So when I spoke to the judges, or had the opportunity to, I could talk about, sustainability. I had salmon brought in from Scotland that was at a hand-raised farm, and yada, yada.
Yeah.
So the effort that I went to was probably a bit extreme, but it also paid great dividends.
Yeah.
And I guess the thing that I didn't realize, was probably a bit naive about, was when I first got there, and the Australian teams were there for, dessert, barbecue, burger, and what have you. We didn't realize it was a teams event. So you're allowed to have 3 in the kitchen. You could have 5 on the team, so you could tap in, tap out, as long as there was only 3 in the kitchen at any one time. So when I arrived, everyone was like, "Oh, John, where's your team?" I'm like, "Don't know what you're talking about." It's like, "Oh, it's a teams event. We can give you a sous chef." I'm like, "No, I've got my game plan. I've got my lesson plan. I've got my timings, and what have you." So I just stuck to what I did. And so I went through round 1, made it into top 10. Came back 2 days later, and then won the overall for the first time. And then what happens when you win your category? 5 or 6 months later, you head to Bentonville, Arkansas, and that's where the corporate headquarters are for Walmart, which is the major sponsor. So you go to the innovation space. We're at the Culinary School there at Brightwater, and we used the school there. And there are elimination challenges. So you start with 10 teams. After day 1, there's 6 left. Then day 2 is round 2 and 3. So I was fortunate enough to move through those. And then what we did is, in the final for the World Food Championship, we had to create courses 3 and 4 off a 5-course tasting menu. And it was based on Crystal Bridges Museum. So Chef Tim Ordway took us through to Restaurant 11. He showed us their food style and what have you. So we had to sort of replicate that feel. Which was amazing. So once again, I did all the research before I went over. So I saw my produce. I had seafood suppliers helping seafood bring it to the lobby of where I was staying. I was like, it was phenomenal, Fran. It was an hour every day for 5 months of solid research, planning, mapping, ingredients list, equipment list. I had a guy over in Dallas that helped me on the ground with equipment, because obviously their power sockets are different to ours.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah, it was, look, if anything's achievable, you put your mind to it and you execute it as well as you can do anything. And I was sort of blown away of the magnitude of achieving what I did. But by winning the overall World Food Championship, a lot of the people that sort of win their categories, and that, they go on to do pop-ups for Sam's Club and Walmart. But because we don't have those here, I couldn't do too much for the sponsors. And being the first international in history to take it offshore, I thought, I don't want to be seen as the first guy to do that and not return. So I had to go back. I didn't have to, but I did go back the next year. And then I went back-to-back seafood again. I'm like, God, I've got to go back again for the overall World Food Championship title. So I did go back, and I finished 3rd. So a
Yeah.
podium finish, and I did the whole thing solo both
Wow.
times. I was allowed to bring a team. They said you could. And I thought, you know what? I started it like this.
Yeah.
I'll ride the wave as far as I can.
Yeah.
I was just very fortunate to do as well as I did, and so in 2 years, I ended up 3 world titles, and,
Yeah.
I stepped out of the kitchen 5 years ago. So,
Wow.
you've always got to back yourself, and, if you know what you're doing, you're on task, you do your research, it doesn't arrive on a silver platter. You've got to dig
No.
deep. Everyone knows what it takes to do what you need to do. You just got to get on with it.
No, definitely. And I mean, and what a wonderful inspiration for the young chefs that that you work with now and that you give back to with Bocca Store and with everywhere throughout the industry. I think that's
Thank you.
incredible because you can hand on heart go, I did it.
Yeah,
I
I
did
did.
it.
It's in the record books.
Absolutely. Not once, but twice, but 3 times.
I know, right?
Amazing.
I know.
Amazing.
Little Johnny. I know.
Yeah, well done you. Not so little Johnny anymore.
No,
I
I
think
know, right?
credibility and your brand is fabulous. So
Thank
let's
you.
go on to we've gone through that the important stuff, I suppose.
Yeah, sure.
Or a very, very high level, sort of 40 minutes or 30 minutes of going through, your life in a very short
Sure.
space of time.
Yeah, of
But
course.
let's just go have a little bit of fun and just ask a few
Yeah,
questions.
no worries.
What's the worst business or life advice that you ever got?
The worst business advice I ever got is growth at all costs. Look, reality is chasing scale without profit structure or sustainability sinks all businesses. So, as I said, I'm a detailed person.
Mm.
Growth is great, but you got to make sure you got the right infrastructure and foundation to support it, because you can scale too quickly and it implodes. And I've sort of been in and around businesses and seen that firsthand.
No, perfect. I 100% agree with you there. If you could have lunch with any historical figure, who would it be?
You might laugh and giggle when you hear this.
I don't know, maybe.
Yeah. Julius Caesar.
Okay.
I always loved the Roman Empire, and I just love to, just understand sort of those tactics and what he achieved and how he went about his business. I just think, the critical role in the fall of the Roman Republic and the rise of the empire would be quite amazing to sort of have a chat over.
Well, it sounds as though he was a pretty cool leader.
Yeah, well, his people got him in the end, though.
Yeah, exactly. So he didn't suffer fools, though, did he either?
No, very true, very true.
But I'm sure there's wonderful lessons there on leadership to learn from him. But there we go. What's a guilty pleasure you refuse to apologise for?
I'd have to say sitting on the lounge in my pajamas, eating a bucket of ice cream or eating chocolate. Behind the scenes.
And nobody, chocolate you've made, ice cream you've made, or just from the freezer?
No, just from the freezer. I'm not a fussy person, trust me.
Brilliant. And if your 30-year-old self had a theme song, what would it be?
If I go back to around that era, like the early 2000s, I'd have to say, as Fat Boy Slim, Praise You.
I love it. Did you ever play that in the kitchen to get everybody moving?
Yeah, did we well, because of the French fine dining stuff, there was never any sound systems in the kitchen, and that sort of grew with me. But there was some businesses that did, and it's quite interesting seeing those different dynamics, from fine dining to maybe a catering business, for instance, where it's a bit more sort of, I don't want to say low key, but people having a bit more fun, where the French disciplines are a little bit more finer and serious. Yeah, it was just. I just like that song. It's about the collaborative chef. You know what I mean? It's, the one knows it's a team sport, but still owns the spotlight.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. So what's one thing you absolutely sucked at in your 30s, but you've mastered now?
Oh, look, I cover this sort of patience. I must say, my patience wick was probably about this big. You know what I mean? Like, it was either go hard or go home. Intense service, high expectations, short fuse for mistakes, especially from others. I had a very low tolerance from it, and it's something that I learned quickly. Fast, sharp, no time for hold handing. It was just go, 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 go. And now, I guess for me, sort of reflecting back on that and from there to now, I feel like I've mastered the art of timing, mentoring, and letting things develop properly.
Mm,
Whether it's a source reduction, whether it's a young apprentice or a career, I understand some things just can't be rushed.
mm,
And you need to be calm about your approach. Leadership styles and management styles have changed
mm,
over the years. And it's a raw skill to be able to be empathetic with what's really going on now.
yeah.
And you'll have to remove yourself from being too invested in things and having a biased view on everything.
Mm,
So I think what I really loved about service in a kitchen is standing on the other side of the pass, calling the
mm,
dockets and facilitating the floor team and the kitchen team. And you can just watch those dynamics playing out, gives you a whole different perspective on the bigger picture, because
yeah.
everyone in the picture plays a role and
Mm,
it all sort of integrates together for a seamless service. So ideally before service, there's a team briefing for the kitchen. There's one for the
mm,
floor team. You might want to pump a special. The team taste it. They talk about it and it just comes together. And I sort of feel by standing at the pass as the conductor, just watching it all come together is a really important way of understanding who's firing, who's not, who needs
mm,
support, who doesn't. And I think that's something that you master over the years. It's not something you just jump into,
yeah.
but it's understanding, hey, is the person on the larder section the right person in larder? Is the person on the pastry and dessert section the right? And the sauce section? And can we bump them over here? And can I move them there? And I think sort of the patience bit for me is
Mm.
been a real game changer over the years.
I think that's amazing. And I think, as you say, as you get older, but also I think it's as you remove judgment and knowing that everyone does have a role to play. And it's then about being able to understand where everyone is at a particular time.
Yeah, look, I think for me, Fran, what I sort of struggled early on in sort of those 2000 years is it was about me, not my team.
Mm.
And now it's not about me. It's actually
Mm.
about my team. And the better
Yeah.
my team perform, the better outcomes there are for me. Whereas I've felt so invested, involved
Yeah.
that it was a reflection on me
Yep.
personally.
Yep.
And that's what I think I've learned is to sort of step back after the
Mm.
advice from Andy and the Carols and what have you. Is like,
Mm. Mm.
wow, okay, if I invest my time into the team, those
Yep.
rewards will come back for me. I'm not the one, I don't physically have to do all the heavy lifting. I
Mm.
just need to be smarter in my strategy and support and management and
Mm.
leadership to get them on the right path, to do the right things at the right time, to get
Yeah.
the right results, for
Ex-
them personally. And professionally, and likewise for me. And, it was a bit like Trippus White. We got to a size where I didn't make all the decisions. We had head chefs in each of those locations. So
yeah.
if they followed the brief, the food concept, they could go and create and design whatever they liked. But as long as it fitted this
Yeah.
brief. So
Yeah.
it's a roadmap, you know what I mean? And
Mm.
like anything in life, it's like our phones. They tell us how to get to a destination. That's
Mm.
all people want. They want to know what the plan is. You give them the
Mm.
plan, you foster that, you support it. The outcome is always great.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely true. And you can't do any more than that, can you?
No, exactly right.
So, wow, John, that was absolutely incredible. Thank you so much. I know
Very well,
so
Pam.
many listeners, not just in the food industry, but everywhere, are going to resonate with your story.
Thank you.
Before we wrap up,
Yep.
just want to ask you, what's the single biggest takeaway you want people to remember from our conversation?
Yeah, certainly. I think the single biggest takeaway from me for today's talk is never underestimate the impression you make on others.
Mm.
I think it's really powerful.
I love that. And I love that. And I really love that because it works in exactly sort of what we're doing now in actually having this conversation and being able to share our, life experiences with, at some point, our listeners. So I really love
Exactly.
that, John. Thank you so much. And
Pleasure.
for everyone listening, here's my challenge to you. Take one thing from today's episode and apply it to your life this week. Maybe it's reaching out to someone who can mentor you. Maybe it's finally taking that leap you've been scared of. Whatever it is, take action. And if this episode inspired you, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. And if you have a question or a topic that you would love me to cover in the future, please send me a message. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for tuning in to What I Wish I Knew at 30. Remember, our best chapters are still ahead. So see you next time. And just before we go, though, John,
Yes.
what's your favourite restaurant at the moment? Where should I?
Being down on the northern beaches, we sort of stay local quite a bit. So we've got I'd probably have to say right here at the moment, the Basin at Mona Vale at the top of the surf club there. Yeah, the team are doing fabulous food there. So
Yep.
right in my lane. Love it.
Perfect. Well, next time I'm in Sydney, I will give you a call. And if you and Karen are free, we'll go to Mona Vale to the Basin. That sounds lovely. Brilliant.
Happy
John,
days.
thank you so much for today. I really appreciate you coming on What I Wish I Knew at 30 and look forward to seeing you probably in Sydney at the food show.
Excellent.